Up, up, down, down, left, right, BA. Why do a whole generation of players know that? I'm DeLeon for Hobby Game Dev, and today I'm going to talk about degamification of our games. So gamification is this thing that's grown outside the game industry of trying to adopt game conventions, rules, point systems, rewards, achievements, recognition. And I say achievements because they've also found their way back into games. But the idea there is that it's some way to drive someone to do something with an incentive, with points, with high scores. And really, most of the time, they're kind of just incentive programs. They're frequent flyer miles, but applied to other things besides the playing industry. Now, the objection, of course, is that there's always a question of whether or not they'd be doing what they're doing otherwise if you stripped away the points and the achievements and the trophies and so on, because otherwise, maybe the game there's not that compelling to begin with. And so what I've been thinking about more recently, partly by accident, has been degamifying our games. And this actually started partly with moving a pinball machine. It's an older model, so rather than it not working at all when one of the wires was unhooked, it just didn't score points when it was supposed to. And so I still had a pinball machine where the ball would knock around and the lights would trigger and the bells would trigger, and I could still try to perform moves on the table, but I wasn't running the reel. I wasn't building up a score in the process. It was still compelling enough to play. And if you look at other games, there's all kinds of other examples where in Doom or Command & Conquer or Descent growing up, I often played with all the cheats on, because frankly I had more fun running around with all the weapons against all the enemies, playing out scenarios in my mind, than I did from the challenge that was set in front of me of trying to prove I was good enough to make it to the next level, or whatever the reward was in a particular game. And if you look back far enough, so like MechWarrior 2 actually had unlimited ammo and unlimited health in the menu, in the options screen. I mean, yes, they didn't let you progress if you used them, but the fact that you could just turn those on if you wanted to play the game that way, that's how I preferred to play it. It wasn't just that I was a kid, it was also that what I really liked most about the game, once again, wasn't that I could overcome the challenge that had been laid in front of me by defeating something in time, by overcoming something with a certain number of lives, but simply that just the way that the mech moved, the way you got a sense of its heft from its bounce and from its easing into its turns, the way you could combine weapons and customize the mechs and battle out in formations and helicopters overhead and cities to crush. I mean, that was what engaged me with the game, not the challenge that was set in place by the designer. And there's actually whole systems, whole categories of games. So most of the things made by Will Wright. If you've ever played SimCity or The Sims, maybe you played it correct, by which I mean you didn't use the cheats. But I know a lot of us, certainly me and my peers, whenever we played those games, we'd use cheat codes to get a whole bunch of money or a whole bunch of items or a whole bunch of special things immediately, because we didn't care about trying to jump through the right hoops to earn something from it. We just wanted to have a set of toys in front of us to play with. And to us what was interesting was how the pieces all fit together, what was possible in the game. And so why something like the Konami code, which of course was originally used in the console version of Gradius, but most popularized through Contra for giving the player a ton of lives, became so famous for a whole generation of players is because that's what made the games really enjoyable. Especially in co-op per se. But so we didn't really care about getting better and better at the game for a sense of mastery. We liked running through the jungle, shooting machine guns at aliens, and 30 lives helped us do that, or having all the power-ups in the Gradius ship help us enjoy that kind of experience without, again, needing to decide that, I'm not good enough because I can't dedicate the time necessary to play this game well. And this is such an easy thing to do, but increasingly it's not seen in games anymore because, achievements, which are literally, again, gamification of our games. These things where they'll plug it in there and say, okay, if you'll do something in under 30 seconds, you get a special achievement or whatnot. Not only have they added a non-necessary incentive to certain play objectives, they've gotten in the way in many cases of cheat codes. So whereas our games used to have, you type in a certain series of keys, or you type in a certain number of key presses, or commands on the controller to get special modes, special abilities, and so on, anymore those things are often not a part of games because, well, they would devalue the achievements, they devalue the trophies, they give you a way to practice sections ahead of time. And so it's gotten in the way of those. And in fact, on Xbox 360 and on PlayStation 3, if I'm not mistaken, there's actually achievements required in the TCRs or the TRCs, the Technical Certification Requirements, Technical Requirement Certification. It's different for each system, but the sense is, what I mean is that you literally cannot make a game for those systems, and again, maybe I'm mistaken, but my understanding is, can't make a game for those consoles without having achievements. And I can assure you if it was true for the last generation, it's almost certainly true for the next one, which is one of the nice things about this bastion of games we can still play online, that we develop for free, on our own time, for each other. But it's tempting to want to set up the challenge and then just, as a designer, have so much pride in the challenge that you've built and the scoring system you've designed that you don't want to let people just have it as a toy. But at the end of the day, oftentimes they're going to be happier if you just let them play with your game instead of forcing them to play your game, if that makes any sense. I mean, so I remember when I was in high school, GoldenEye Nintendo 64 was really popular at the time, and it was really, really hard to unlock the cheats, to get the all guns mode, the slow motion mode, big heads, paintball mode. Some of those are really difficult to get, especially, so for example, unlocking the last levels or unlocking the extra multiplayer maps. But all my friends preferred to play the game with those cheats on. They didn't have the same amount of time to get better at the game to earn that stuff. They just wanted the cheats. And so about 13 of my friends, because I got very good at GoldenEye, lent me their cartridges to unlock the cheat codes and give them their cartridges back, which I was happy to do because I liked the game, liked helping out my friends. It took me a few days to do per person. And the game out of the box could have come with those modes available to the player to get more out of their experience, because for many of them, that was the only way they got to see the later levels, or the only way they got to play the multiplayer rounds they wanted to play in the ways they wanted to. And in single player, they didn't really care about being good enough. They just wanted to run around firing off dual-wielding grenade launchers, and that was what gave them enjoyment from it. So if you're going to build those assets anyway, if you're going to already build that universe, yes, it might be fiction-breaking. Yes, it's not going to challenge the player, but not everyone's engagement comes from challenge. And this actually has a little bit to do as well, partly inspired by the not games movement. And that's something that started with Tale of Tales back at the, I heard it announced at least, at Art History of Games in Atlanta in 2010, early 2010 if I'm not mistaken. And that was all about games that are, about the atmosphere, or say games, game-like technology. Their whole deal was to remove game conventions altogether. I'm not going that extreme, because what they're talking about in many cases are set pieces you can explore, or otherwise. This is very much taking something that's a conventional game and just asking what happens when you strip away the points, when you disable the score, when you disable limited lives, when you disable ammo counts, and just let the player do what they want with it, which doesn't take much programming to do, and might be what your player wants. So I'm just throwing out there as a request to experiment with this idea when you're working with your ideas, when you're working with your games. And I think it's going to help you focus on making a core mechanic that's enjoyable on its own merit. I remember back when Mario 64 came out, a lot of people just liked running around as Mario. It just felt good, the way he ran, the way he jumped, the way he moved, the way the camera swiveled when it did. And that's something that, sort of like I've said before, I've put lots of attention to it. Steve Swink's book, Game Feel, focuses on those aspects of games. But the way to really draw attention to that in your own game is to try, okay, we'll say, if I turn off the timers, the life counter, the ammo counter, is it still any fun to play? Or is the only fun that I had something that was hard to do and I can prove to myself that I can do it? So it's Chris DeLeon for Hobby Game Dev with another strategy for design. In this case, try degamifying your game. If not only for the end user, at least for your internal design purposes, as another way to look at the content you're developing. Thanks again, and I'll talk more to you soon. Bye-bye.